Hi everyone, Professor Henry coming at you here with a brief lecture and an example on evaluating texts, where I'm going to take you through my brainstorming process on evaluating breakfast burritos, particularly focusing on generating ideas and text. So like I said in the previous video, our textbook begins by inviting us to explore what we already know about our subject and to free write on it. So I asked myself, what do I already know about breakfast burritos? Well, I know that breakfast burritos have been around since about the 70s or so. I know that they likely started in New Mexico. I know that now breakfast burritos are ubiquitous. They are all over the place. We can find them in restaurants. Even fast food restaurants offer breakfast burritos as an option. Some offer breakfast burritos all day, like Del Taco. Of course, taco trucks, grocery stores, and convenience stores all have breakfast burrito options. I also know that ingredients for breakfast burritos vary widely. Some breakfast burritos, though, tend to always have the same core ingredients. Always use flour tortillas, they always have eggs, they always have cheese, and they always have an option for some kind of meat. The typical options include chorizo, ham, bacon, and breakfast sausage. They also come with ingredients fairly often, but they're not always present. For example, potatoes, beans, and salsa. And occasionally, you can add avocado, sour cream, or creme fraiche. Next, the test book asks us to explore what our initial gut feelings are on our subject. My initial gut feeling for breakfast burritos are that most of them are good, but only a few of them achieve excellent status. Or put another way, many breakfast burritos, in my view, meet my expectations, but there are only a few that I've ever had that exceed my expectations. Conversely, there aren't many that don't meet my expectations, but there are a few. And then I was thinking about, well, what is it about those few breakfast burritos that didn't meet my expectations? And I thought that maybe they just had a bad flavor profile, maybe they were too salty or they were overcooked, or on the other hand, maybe they were too bland. Having a tough tortilla is kind of a deal breaker for me too. I like my breakfast burritos to have fresh tortillas, those that if not made that morning, they at least taste and feel like they were made fresh that morning. And I noticed that as I was thinking about and writing about this was already helping me to think about my criteria for how I would evaluate whether or not I would recommend a specific breakfast burrito. Super Taco is a restaurant in Visalia, and those are the breakfast burritos that I thought would be an interesting choice to kind of be the specific subject of my evaluation. And I was thinking that that their breakfast burritos absolutely meet my expectations, but I don't think they quite exceed my expectations. They're very good, but they're not the best that I've ever had. Okay, so those are some of my initial gut feelings. Well, then came this next question that I thought was really interesting, and I was kind of perplexed at first, thinking about like breakfast burritos and my basic values or my basic beliefs. And I'm like, do breakfast burritos really operate on the level of values and beliefs? But after I thought about it for a little bit, some things did start to come clear to me. I for a long time have had the attitude that food can help people connect in a way that transcends geopolitical borders. And that food could also be a metaphor for common ground and for understanding, particularly in the United States, where we have so many kinds of fusion cuisines. The breakfast burrito, I think, being a great example of the fusion of breakfast cuisines and staple breakfast foods from a couple of different cultures. Breakfast burritos in particular are perhaps a kind of metaphor for common ground and understanding between Mexicans, Southwesterners, and the United States as a whole, because, as I was saying, they combine staples from each other's breakfast diets. And I want to emphasize this part. I think it's particularly important to think about in terms of writing. That at the time of writing the Google slide deck, I had not specifically thought about those connections until I was asked to write about it by answering the question above. To me, that's really, really important to point out. It reveals that oftentimes it's through the process of writing that new connections start happening in our brain. We see things in a way that we haven't seen them before, and it is through the act of writing that helps us do that. So it's like writing is a process of discovery in and of itself. Now, thinking about this business of how food can be a metaphor for common ground and understanding, I thought that that could be a way to situate my evaluation of something that could be simple, like breakfast burritos, into a larger conversation about a public issue like cultural relations. The next question, how have others evaluated subjects like this? Well, to help me get started with kind of reflecting and writing on this question, I just did a quick Google search to look for like best breakfast burrito in Central California or best breakfast burrito in Visalia. And I came up with some pretty basic stuff. A lot of the top hits from Google sent me to a Yelp kind of search result or a TripAdvisor search result, where not a lot of people were using criteria for their evaluation. Their responses were fairly limited to things like, oh, so-and-so has the best breakfast burrito in town, with no real contextual support. So in this sense, the evaluations on Yelp and on TripAdvisor and so on, they depended solely on the ethos or the credibility of the reviewer and of the review service. Okay, that's the thing that I want us to grow beyond in working through this writing project. The criteria is going to be the big piece of the puzzle in helping us grow beyond just merely the pre-existing ethos or the pre-existing credibility of you as the writer. So, what should be used to evaluate breakfast burritos in this case? Well, I thought, given what I value and given what I'd thought about before, maybe my first criteria should be the degree to which the breakfast burrito is able to combine staples from Mexican and American cuisine. Second criteria, given some general food criticism that came up in my admittedly very quick and light research, a lot of folks were valuing breakfast burritos based on their ability to fill them up for a period of time. In other words, the breakfast burrito wasn't too small. Now, given my own personal criticism, I'm also thinking about evaluating breakfast burritos in terms of their freshness and also in terms of the establishment's options to let me customize the breakfast burrito to my liking. Then think about a specific iteration of your subject. For me, I'm thinking about the restaurant Super Taco in Visalia and how their breakfast burritos meet my criteria for evaluation. So criteria 1, combine staples from Mexican and American cuisine. In my view, Super Taco meets expectations. Their burritos include eggs, cheese, potatoes, refried beans, and all the standard meat options. Criteria 2, how filling are they? In my view, meets expectations. All of the portions at Super Taco are excellent, and the breakfast burritos are no exception. They're not quite as big as other places like the heavyweight burrito champion at Ortega's in Reedley, but Super Taco has a respectable middleweight burrito. Criteria 3, freshness. In my view, this is where Super Taco really shines, exceeds expectations. Notwithstanding that breakfast burritos are off-menu items at Super Taco, they are always made to order, which is also true of everything else on their menu. The tortillas feel and taste as though they've just come out of el horno de la abuela de mi amigo, perfección. Criteria 4, customization. meets expectations. Being made to order, the burritos can have whatever ingredients are desired. They would exceed expectations if all of the meats came standard without upcharges. Comparing my subject with others, I had already mentioned Ortega's in Reedley. Ortega's is an example of a breakfast burrito that exceeds my expectations in every regard. They combine cuisine and have a salsa bar. They're extremely filling due to their size, an option for all available proteins. They're made to order with fresh tortillas that compare to Super Tacos, and they come with or without anything that you want, all for the same price. Ortega's, based on my criteria, exceeds expectations in every regard. So there's a point of comparison with Super Tacos breakfast burritos. Now, I want to try to state my overall judgment of Super Tacos breakfast burrito as a tentative thesis statement. Watch how this comes together. Although they might be lacking in their ability to bring about a full-on food coma, Super Tacos breakfast burritos are worth a try because they're made to order with fresh ingredients, with options from both Mexican and American breakfast cuisine. Let me break that down for you a little bit. That working thesis includes, at heart, a judgment. That happens when I say that the breakfast burritos at Super Tacos are worth a try. Okay, that's really the core of my thesis. That's the essence of the argument I'm going to be making with my evaluation. That yeah, these breakfast burritos, you should try them. Okay. A little bit then on how the criteria comes together. I'm saying in the working thesis that my criteria, not only what it is, but it is met. So the criteria again, does it combine cuisine? Well, I answer that with a language with options from both Mexican and American. I answer the criteria about whether or not it's filling. Although lacking in ability to bring about a full-on food coma, right? So that's kind of a fun way to say that, like, it's not going to overstuff you, but it's probably going to fill you up. Is it fresh? I say pretty directly here, made from fresh ingredients. And does it have the ability to be customized? I kind of answer with the language with options from both. Note how central forming specific criteria is to this whole process. Okay, now with that breakdown in mind, I want to go back to the previous slide and look at the working thesis statement again. Although they might be lacking in their ability to bring about a full-on food coma, Super Tacos breakfast burritos are worth a try because they're made to order with fresh ingredients with options from both Mexican and American breakfast cuisine. I never would have arrived at that working thesis statement without thinking about and developing my criteria first. Another thing our textbook asks us to explore and to think about is other people's opinions. For something like breakfast burritos, when my evaluation is centered around perhaps recommending or not recommending the breakfast burrito to others, I might acknowledge other opinions by stating that, we all have our individual favorites. Because breakfast burritos, as we mentioned before, are ubiquitous. They're all over the place. And everybody has their favorites, right? So I might include language like this somewhere in one of my paragraphs early on in my writing. While some of us might be indifferent, in other words, we don't really care about breakfast burritos, many of us are passionate and have our favorites. Now, I'm not arguing that Super Taco has the best breakfast burritos ever. In truth, they don't. But I am arguing that they're worth a try. Some might argue that there are options elsewhere that have a better value. That is to say that they're cheaper. However, I would argue that at less than $8, it's a small risk to try something new. So with all of that language, I'm really working toward anticipating other people's opinions and responding to their opinions in a way that both acknowledges that there are other perspectives, but also encourages some attention to be shined on my perspective, and also doing so in a way that is non-combative. Finally, work your way through identifying and supporting your reasons for your judgment. Some things that I thought that I could do in order to give good reasons for my evaluation of Super Taco's breakfast burritos is that maybe I could go there and take notes on how Super Taco puts my next order together. So in this case, I would be doing like primary research. I could observe and confirm the freshness of the ingredients. I could record how long it takes for the order to be prepared. I could take note of the specific costs. When I mentioned $8 before, this just based on my recollection, but I could certainly pay attention to the specific costs as a part of my research. I could also take a friend and ask their opinion so that when I'm evaluating my subject, I can share multiple perspectives on the same subject. Okay, with all of that in mind then, next steps would be to maybe consider an organizational strategy for all of this information. It turns out that our textbook has a couple of organizational templates so that if you're not quite sure what you should do to organize the essay, the textbook can help you out there right towards the end of chapter 16. You might also consider writing out an outline, and then just start writing sentences and paragraphs. Don't worry about crafting a title. Don't worry about crafting an introduction or a conclusion quite yet. Just get started. The title, the intro, and the conclusion will all come a little bit later on in the process. So think about what subject you want to evaluate, and then work your way through generating ideas in text like I did, and you'll be well on your way towards starting your essay. Good luck and have fun with this.